There's a lot of advisor mastermind groups. There's a lot of CEO mastermind groups, but where I notice the gap is in some of these larger firms, they have a variety of titles, but I can summarize them in one title, which is a chief growth officer, where essentially they're in charge of the advisors and helping them grow. I'm a big believer that the distance between where you are and what your goal is the amount of energy that you'll expend to hit that goal.
Mhm.
So you may hit 100,000 advisors, you may not, but I'm willing to bet that in the process over the next 3 years, the impact that you'll have will be across thousands, if not tens of thousands of advisors, which would be more than if your goal was to help 100 advisors. So whether the goal is hit or not, it's going to be a heck of a lot more than what it would be if your goal was much smaller.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And really, the context of the goal is about being able to think in ways that pushes towards serving 100,000 advisors. So it's a forcing function. If I'm thinking about what should I do next in my business, what am I building, I want to build it in a way that allows it to have reach that can impact more rather than less, right? So it just allows for that growth. It creates the space to walk into it. So the exact number is not the point. It's just it's a lot of advisors, right? And if I can think
Yes,
of it in that way around, like that can have a lot of impact. And to your point, way more than if my focus was 100. And not that that wouldn't have a big ripple effect, but like it's a different way of thinking about it. And I find there's a lot of leverage doing that.
for sure. And it forces you to be creative and figure out, speaking of leverage, how you
Mm.
can serve that many people in a leverage fashion because you most certainly cannot, serve 100,000 people at once in an exchange of your time for their dollars.
That's
So
right.
it forces you to be creative too. So, with that said, I guess before we dive into some of these topics, Nick, give us a sense of your background. So you figure, after school, what were, some of the stops of the train, so to speak, to get you to where you are today?
I just started running a new group of helping advisors this morning. So I've told the story once already today, or a version of it at least. But obviously, I grew up in England and back in the late
What do you mean,
90s.
obviously? You don't sound like you grew up in England.
Giving everyone that's listening and watching some credit. But the way it was for me was like it was just straight out of high school, walk to the city of London and get a job. I worked in banking like right before in the tech boom, tech bubble, and started there in 2000. I worked in banking for 20 years all over the world. And like the big story for me, really in that first dynamic of it, was why do people do things differently? I remember the first team I ran when I was 23 years old. I had 4 or 5 people on my team. They were all like much older than me. And the work itself was the work, right? It was pressing buttons, getting things done, like dealing with traders and like in a high pressure environment. Like you could see that people that relatively the same sort of experience, same sort of age, they would go through the day. One would go through the day and like go through and have a flow and then get the result. And then another one would be like crashing the phone down, like run outside for a cigarette, come back in, like, let's get the result at the end of the day. But the experience was really different. Like, let me start to think like, what is the difference? What's the difference in the motivation between people and why they do things? And really that's the genesis. And I obviously didn't know at the time. If I look back to the journey I've got to now, it's like people fascinate me and everything in life, all the satisfaction we get, a lot of the heartache as well, comes from people, comes from relationships. And really using that as a essential part of how we do things is really important. And I spent a lot of time working in London and I decided to quit and go traveling, like in the crisis in 2008, 2009. Traveled all around the world, came back to London, met my old boss and said, I need a job, please. And I said, I need a job anywhere but London. And I found myself living and working in the Philippines. Great experience working in Asia for a couple of years. I campaigned for a move to the States and I moved to Florida, lived there for a long time. That's where I met my wife. Moved to New York, worked on Wall Street. I had the best job I've ever had with the most autonomy I've ever had. Like working in Wall Street, I always wanted to work from and making the most money I've ever had, but I was miserable. It's like, this, I don't want to do this anymore. I really want to align myself with what's really important to me, which I was still figuring out, of course, but I looked at what I liked about what I was doing, what I was good at, and it's that connection with people, building rapport, helping people getting the results that they want to get to. That's when I decided to move to coaching, and I was a Tony Robbins coach for a long time, and it's a whole different story, like super amazing experience. When I moved to North Carolina, I decided to refocus and get really clear and leverage my finance background and start to work with financial advisors. And it's been really refreshing to be able to do that. And like different business owners along the way. And what I'll say about that as well, Dave, is like how important it is to realize that where focus is for advisors, but business is business, people are people, and there's so many overlaps between all the different industries. And so have clients over the years. I've still got a bunch of these, like, have car washes or have recycling companies, like, or just many different things. And there's just so many variables on that. And so when we moved to North Carolina and started focus working with advisors, and that's what I've been building from them. And it's what I get to do every day now, which is super exciting.
Love it. Well, walk me through this idea, and I shouldn't say this idea because it's a tried and true idea, probably well before this, but I remember first coming across the strategy of forming masterminds in the book Think and Grow Rich. And that is such a staple book for anyone in any industry, to help with becoming more successful. And one of the things they really harp on in that book, I think is towards the end, is the idea of forming masterminds. So I'm curious to know on your end, I want to start more general and then get tactical. Start by talking to me about the importance of masterminds for advisors.
Thanks for that reminder. Actually, I forgot it was in that book. Yeah, that's it. Just like as soon as you said it, it kind of made me go back to first reading that book, which was a long time ago. That's really cool. So important to surround yourself with people that have high standards, that want to that want to push themselves, that want to be in a place where they're getting challenged. It's like, so if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with someone else. That's the baseline concept, right? It's like me and you doing this podcast today. For people that are watching, listening to it, like, can take some of it, right? You want to be around people that are pushing the envelope, and it may not be exactly what you want to do, but it's taking the standard, right? People are either examples or warnings. And it's my commitment, as much as I possibly can be, is to be an example where people decide to look at things that we're doing and use that to leverage for themselves to go to the next level, right? So that's in the essence, the power of masterminds, is that you can look around a group of people that are, and the most powerful version of it is when the people that are adjacent to you. It's like running the 100 meters in the Olympics. That's always the event that I want to watch in the Olympics, right? That's for me, the flagship event. And it's like the guy that comes first versus the guy that comes eighth. All the marbles goes to the guy that wins the gold, right? I mean, the guy second, he gets the silver, third gets a bronze. Number four, the fourth fastest man in the world, doesn't get anything, right? Let alone the guy at number eight. It's crazy. I mean, obviously, in the actual time difference between those is very small, but it does make a difference, right? But who would you most learn from, right? The guy that came in eighth can learn a bunch from the guy that came in first. And I would suggest the guy that came in first can learn a bunch from the guy that came in eighth. It's the people that are just adjacent to you, right? Just behind you, just in front of you, or just by the side of you, where you can learn the most from, because you're zeroed into the same piece, but you're in a slightly different position as well. Not to say that from industry to industry, just like we were talking about, there's not stuff that you can learn. But when you come back down to, like you said, the tactical and the specifics of it, you want the people that are there or thereabouts in terms of the way that what they're doing.
Now, what are your thoughts on a peer-led mastermind compared to a facilitator-led mastermind? You may be a little biased because I picture you helping lead and facilitate masterminds, but I guess what have you seen work and why does it work?
That's my focus, to help 100,000, because I know I can't do that all myself. That's why I want to give away a lot of this stuff. But it certainly can work, right? It certainly can work. The people often ask me, and as I'm sure they do ask you, right, what's the best tool? What's the best system to use, right? And the baseline answer to that is, well, the one that you'll actually use, right? And to get the result. So if you have a peer-led mastermind, that's awesome. That's awesome. The challenge with that from the start point is that if you're the leader of that mastermind, you've got to lead it as well as facilitate it, as well as participate in it, as well as doing admin, logistics, and all those type of things. And so you can make it work, right? You have the primary leader and you make sure that they're really clear on the roles and who does what. And perhaps you perform the leadership role and then you move out with someone else in the group for after a couple of months or a couple of rotations and stuff as well. So I've definitely seen it work for sure. It can do, but it requires much more on the front end of the leader to make sure it keeps going as well, which takes away from the impact they're going to get. Like it's never going to be quite as good as it could be if they're only there to show up, right? It's like it's me and my wife are watching a show on Netflix right now. We like at the evening we watch after the kids go to bed. We've got like a half an hour downtime, watch a bit of Netflix, and it's a medical show. I was just thinking about one of the scenes when they're in the operating room, like the surgeon is doing surgeon things, right, and all of the support people around them, they're doing their roles, right, and like it's not a case of one role is more important than the other role. It's like they're all doing different roles, and they're doing different roles because it's the most efficient way of getting the result they want to get to. So the surgeons there are asking for a scalpel. They're not picking it off the table and doing it themselves. They're asking for it and they get put it into their hands, right? Because it's the nurse's job to get the exact tool that they ask and make sure it doesn't get wrong to put it in the surgeon's hands so he can be 100% focused on doing what he's doing. It's the same situation. If you're going to get the best results from being in a mastermind, you want to make sure that you've got someone that's separate and getting to the outcome. Now, that said, absolutely, if you're in a pillar mastermind and it works, then great. Like, and then it's a case of just upgrading it. Is it really what you want it to be? Are you getting the results that you want? Is everyone really committed? Is the standard high and you're having a great time and are really impacting your business through doing it?
I put together a mastermind group that was just sort of a pro bono, doing these folks a solid, where there's a lot of advisor mastermind groups. There's a lot of CEO mastermind groups, but where I noticed the gap is in some of these larger firms, they have a variety of titles, but I can summarize them in one title, which is a chief growth officer, where essentially they're in charge of the advisors and helping them grow. And I noticed that was a area in the marketplace that was underserved. So just to test it out, I had a bunch of those firms as clients that had those roles. And I said, hey, I want to help put together a mastermind. I'll lead the first one. And, then you guys just take it from there, because I wanted them to join because they wanted to. I didn't want them to feel as if I was trying to make money off them, because it's not part of our core business model. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just wanted to do them a solid. And the feedback that I've gotten from them, because they've been doing it for 3, maybe 4 months since the initial phone call, what I suggested that they did, since it was peer-led, and this will all lead to a question, since it was peer-led, is, hey, Pat is in charge of the first meeting. Megan's in charge of the second meeting. Katie's in charge of the next meeting. Keith is in charge of the next meeting. So they're all taking some of the leadership, administrative, and facilitation responsibilities, so it doesn't just fall on one person. So I didn't think that was fair to fall on one person when they weren't getting paid. If I was getting paid for it, I would be that guy, but that wasn't the intention of setting up this group. And the feedback that I received is that it's been valuable. However, they run out of time. They go down rabbit holes because no one is helping facilitate and time things out or make people stick to an agenda. So my question is, when someone's thinking about a mastermind, what do you do as it relates to, first, cadence? Is it once a month, once a quarter, twice a month? What does that look like? Is it all virtual? Do you ever recommend that they do in person? Like, what does the cadence look like? And then also, what should the structure be, both in terms of time spent? Is it an hour, 2 hours, half a day, full day, 30 minutes? What's the agenda look like? How do you keep people on track with the agenda? So kind of help. I said I'd start more general and then get tactical. So let's get tactical.
My goal around this is to create framework and then make it available depending on what the group might need, right? So I think about, if I zoom all the way out and think, okay, what's the 3 biggest principles? I just call them the 3 keys to mastermind success. It's commitment, collaboration, and consistency. And like that just by itself is, I want like a little bit of guidance. I got it, right? I want to run it, I want to do the thing. Like, those are the top 3. And then you can go into detail to understand what that really means, right? Like, if you're committed, you're all in, like, you got it. Like, and we're open and we're collaborative and we're willing to be honest and open. And then we're all in on consistently showing up, right? And I make sure that we're getting the results over time and getting the compound interest from that. And then from that, and to answer your question, there's lots of ways to do it. So I wanted to get the framework to think about what's the So you got the framework to think about and then make it individual for that particular mastermind. And obviously we've got recommendations as well, right? So that the framework, I just call it the focus model, right? So the first thing is to find the right members, and then there's steps in that to validate and set our questions to say, how do I know I've got the right members? And then once I've got the right members, and it's a kind of dynamic process as well, or you can follow it, of course, sequentially, as it were, is to define what the purpose is and the goals, right? So why are we here overall? What does that look like? What are we trying to achieve? And then specifically what the goals for that period of time, for that year, for instance. And then once we've got find the right members, so the F and the O is outline the purpose and goals, and then the C is to create the structure. And then we go on to utilize tools and accountability, and then sustainably and how do we grow. But like part of that is the structure piece. And our recommendation is, depending on the size of the group, like if we've got a medium-sized group, say 4 to 7, 8 advisors, an hour every 2 weeks is a good cadence to think about. And I do like a kick-off version of it as well to define those things out. That's a bit longer. I definitely have had groups where they would prefer to meet 2 hours once a month and then make a commitment every quarter to meet in person as well. I'm about One of my clients connected me with someone that runs an insurance company that also runs a mastermind for his advisors. It's like, this guy doesn't know how to run masterminds. Like, he's got a great commitment to it, and like he's got capability, but he's never done it before, right? So like he's like, can you help him do this? So
Mm.
I spent the last couple of weeks pulling this together, and we're about to go up to New York to do this thing next week or so, 2 weeks after, I should say. And so their version of it's a bit different, but the principles remain the same, right? So I wanted to make sure to pull that together. And as you go through that process, it will become clear as to what you need for your particular group, depending on how far they are along in their business journey, how many people it is as well. But we definitely have some specific recommendations, because that's the stuff that people get bogged down in, right? Like, what is the detail of it? But like, so having that process to follow, I think, is really important. But ultimately, finding the right set of people and really being clear for you what is it that you want, the cadence and stuff will reveal itself. And my recommendations of how we do that become a bit clearer, like, or what allow you to get to that point quicker, I should say, as well.
Well, there's some of the, and I'm sure every group is different, so we can just rattle off a bunch of options that folks can right size for themselves.
Mhm.
But what are some of the agenda items? Is it what's your tech stack? What's your marketing plan? Like, what are you encouraging people to actually discuss so that people aren't hopping on a call being like,
Oh yeah,
so
it's
what do
the
you want to
opposite.
talk about?
Yeah, anything but that, right? I mean, to your point, like if you've got a group of people, you're just going to burn the time up, right? Because like, as a group of smart people, they can wing things. In fact, like the smarter the group is, and it's likely going to be a smart group of people, the more that they're going to wing things, and the more they can burn the time anyway, like, and appear in a good way, but never get a result. I like to start with the setup, and the template is so important, right? So really understand what is it that we want to accomplish here, and then specifically invite everyone to just get really clear on what their business looks like. What are the real numbers? Let's just be open and clear and submit all that, put it all together so everyone can see where things are. And just by doing that process on the front end, that creates a lot of awareness. It creates a lot of ways of seeing things you didn't see before, and like, wow, like I thought that was just a problem for me, but oh, it's a problem for you as well. And oh, you do things that way. So that really starts, like, that's a great starting point to build out like what the agenda looks like on a month-to-month basis, right? So some some masterminds, the way I have it set up is that once a month we'll go back to the numbers. Okay, so part of it will be setting the goals, what we're getting to right now at a high level, much higher level than it would be like on a one-on-one coaching situation, of course. But like, what are the numbers we're tracking together? What did you say that was most important? We might hit that once a month, and then might think about like those off weeks being, okay, look, we wanted to really understand about how your team's set up. So one of the participants takes it on to come back and present on a deep dive of how their team is set up, and then people will have actions that come back on the back of that as well, and kind of make sure that we've got that set up in front. So we kind of got that agenda laid out. And you could do that up to 12 months laid out. It could be every few months we adjust on it, but like knowing that up front is really important. We're not going to get into the actual mastermind because that's the golden time, right, Dave? Like, that time that you've got together has to be all upside stuff. All the other stuff before it is the pre-work that needs to be figured out. And that's the connective tissue, right? To make sure that you can go in there and like lift the weights, right? You need to make sure that stuff is done beforehand so they can execute on the agenda when they're in there.
So it seems like it's identifying some of the pain points or opportunities that the group is experiencing and having each meeting sort of be a bit of a theme maybe around some of those things, like you said, like team structure. Next could be, what are you doing from a marketing standpoint that's working or not working. Another one could be, what does your sales process look like, the cadence of meetings, your follow-up strategy. And then there's actions after each of those meetings of, okay, based on today, evaluate your current sales structure and take what you learned and apply it. And the expectation is that there's action taken after each of the calls to ensure progress and not just good conversation.
Absolutely. And the magic, of course, is that you fill in the gaps for what you need, right? Like, so if I think about one example, an advisor comes in and says, look, I really wanted to be in a mastermind with this guy because I saw that he had 7 million in 1 year, and I just don't understand quite how he did that. And my practice is bigger than him. I don't know what was the methodology he did around that, right? I'm building a steady pace, but like, how did he hit that in 1 year? Like, was it an acquisition? If it was, how did he go through, do that? What's the size of the team? Is it just a volume play? And so that tends to be the starting point. Like, I want to know what this person did in that. Like, what is it about? And then we make sure that we're really clear what you want overall from that, and then build out the agenda and build out those pieces based on that as well. I think it's so important. And having a place to share the content is so important, because you want to be able to come back to it. Like, it's almost creating a repository of everything you would ever need to kind of build your business, because there's just so much gold that comes out of those conversations. It's just making sure it's collated in the same way, because the opposite, right? One of the reasons why I was so convicted with this, because I had a client who, by the way, I didn't even know he was in a study group, not a mastermind, a study group. And for me, that's just like the old school term of it, right? I'm going to transform study groups to masterminds. Like, study groups are fine and comfortable, but masterminds transformational, right? And that's the juice. And he said to me, oh yeah, like I meet with like my study group every quarter or so. When we meet for a couple of hours. Normally we coincide with some sort of event. And so like, we play golf afterwards. That's nice. We have a couple of hours. There's always a couple of nuggets I take away. I write down. It's good. What's wrong with that? Nothing. Like, nothing wrong with that at all. What we're missing is that huge opportunity, that connectivity before that, right? It's just a comfortable thing, rather than really getting clear about what we're sharing and how we implement that in our business.
Before I go over and transition towards some relationship stuff, how many people is too many to have in a mastermind?
I think it's an art as much as it is as a science. I think once you're getting above 10, 12, it becomes challenging to manage. And then that affects, like a sliding scale of stuff, right? And that might affect the way you set it up. If you're in a position where it's like, well, we actually meet once a month and it's for 3 hours, and we have like a lot of our team doing the back work and the coordination, and we're really tight on it, you might be able to get to that 12 number, something like that. And so that, if that's what they wanted to start with, it might be easier to do that. But I think once you get above like to that 8, 10 mark, you're losing some of the impact depending on how you set it up as well.
I mean, even just having a schedule, 12 people, that in and of
Right.
itself is a challenge
Absolutely.
just
Yeah,
logistically.
exactly. Yeah.
Let's walk through your belief, which I don't think is a belief. I think it's fact that advisors need to make sure that they're maintaining a relationship-centric approach to their business and their clients, even as technology advances. And I'm going to bring up a tech tool that we have that I think helps not replace the relationship building process, but rather helps augment the process. And I'll share it with you to get your thoughts on it, but help unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, awesome, man. This makes me jump up and down the side, like, because the relationships and the depth that we have with our clients, really any industry, but certainly financial services, because of the way it's often thought about. My favorite celebrations are when clients come to me and say, look, this week, I remember the one sticks out right now. It's probably like 9 months ago or so. He jumped on Zoom and he was in his car. He said, sorry, I'm in my car, but I'm outside a client's house. I just came out. And she called me a couple of weeks ago to say, husband had just passed away, and like that, he'd been understanding where it was along the way, and so it wasn't so surprising, but a sad moment, of course. And he was the third or fourth person that she called, because of the depth of their relationship and what it means that they've helped each other over the years, and giving her a lot of certainty and security in the time of her need. And of course, that comes with the financial picture, but it's the relationship that did it, right? And it's much more than just that. security from a financial point of view. And so like for me, that's just an obvious way of how important it is. I was working with a group this morning, accelerator group I do with, we just kicked the latest one off with a small group this morning. And I wanted to share with these advisors like how important it is to think about the depth and impact that you have. Like it's not just the financial piece. It's not what you know technically, it's how what you're building. And that's what's going to be most fulfilling as well. Ultimately, people want to be connected to other people. That's it. And technology, for me, is a way of accelerating that process, not to remove that process in any way.
And I think it accelerates it, but also I think it helps from a system standpoint to ensure that things don't fall through the cracks. And what I mean by that is
Yes.
most advisors, if given a this or that question, would you rather have deep relationships with your clients or surface level relation? They're obviously going to choose the deeper relationships, but frankly, people just become busy and they have this, oh crap, I haven't talked to Nick in 5 months, right? And a lot of things, fall through the cracks. So we've developed a tool. It's an AI tool, which for a while, I was very resistant to AI because I'm pro-human. However, it's not
That's
going
funny.
anywhere and I'm not turning into a dinosaur, and I want to utilize it for my own business, but also I want to figure out a way to develop tools for advisors to help augment the things that they want to do. And one of the things they want to do is build relationships and deepen those relationships
Mhm.
with their clients. So essentially we have a tool that plugs into an advisor's CRM, it plugs into their note taker, and it plugs into their email. And what happens is, think about in conversations, like in our first conversation, I know that you're a girl dad, right? As an example, you know that, my wife is pregnant and she's due later this summer, early fall, September 1st to be exact. You pick up things through conversations where it's like, hey, it would be really nice if when I was talking to people about, my wife being pregnant, if around the end of August, I got a note from them like, hey, hope everything's going well with your wife and that the pregnancy and ultimately the birth, goes smoothly. But what ends up happening is I connect with folks, say in October, and they're like, hey, how's the baby? Did everything go great? And that's awesome, right? But there's ways in which you can be proactive about that. So as long as you're having conversations with your clients beyond financial planning, then this tool works, because what it does is it learns everything about your clients that's in your CRM, your note taker, and your email for email correspondence. And they get an email every single week that basically says, hey, Nick, here are 12 clients you should reach out to, and here's why. Daughter is graduating college this week because it learned it from the notes. Oh, and by the way, here's an email template that you can either click send or you can use as inspiration, edit, or just pick up the phone, whatever your method of communication is. However, this serves as your reminder essentially. Or, hey, Nick is, wrapping up a home renovation around this time, reach out to him and ask how it's going. Favorite sports team just won the Super Bowl, go and reach out to Nick and congratulate him and see if he had a chance to watch the game. So it helps prompt you on a weekly basis of all the clients that you should reach out to, why you should reach out to them, and even goes as far as to put together an email draft in your tone of voice that you can use to just click send or use as inspiration. So we've developed it because advisors want to develop relationships. But when I say, hey, advance a couple relationships every single day, they're like, okay, but like, what do I do? It's like, boom, here's an email that you get prompted with every week of exactly what to do. So we don't have to have this conversation anymore. Just do the thing. So that's one thing that we've developed to not replace the relationship building process, but to prompt and augment, to hold advisors accountable and to give them a system to abide by, to be intentional about advancing those relationships.
That's awesome, man. I got to address what you said a couple of times, right? Let's be clear. It's augmentation. I had a friend of mine, I was talking to him about ChatGPT, and he's like, oh, I don't like that. I want to think for myself. I was like, oh, come on. Come on. So I explained to him that what it does is just takes away the first few layers of thought so that we can put the human on the stuff, the creativity part, which is, it allows us to get to that point quicker, right? So it's the same thing. It's like it's taking the system, it's taking the prompt such that you can put that relationship currency in an easier way and more systematic way. I think it's so important, right? I will invite my advisors, I coach them to having the right system to follow up, right? Every time they're on with their client, they make sure that they follow up with the booking the next call, right? It's a way of building trust. And that call rotation will change depending on how that client relationship is and what the client wants and what you want. But having the linkage between each conversation is a way of building currency through that. And I think being able to add those extra pieces in and be prompted by the things that have already been said, because it is augmentation, because it's not making anything up, right? It's like it's the real thing that happened.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and when you have I heard this yesterday from my business partner. I was like, I think that's spot on. When you have a really good relationship with your clients, I believe, based on what he shared, I believe it to be true, that there's almost a layer of guilt if they ever thought about leaving, meaning you could have made a mistake, but they're more likely to give you grace and an opportunity to fix it than to just up and leave compared to if they did not have a good relationship with you
Yeah.
because of guilt. So if you're doing a good job building a great relationship, not that you should be messing up all the time anyways, but it's still a business run by humans. There will be mistakes at some point. They're going to give you the grace because you've given them the thought and the intent in deepening the relationship beyond just finances.
Right. And it may be that that's the emotion that might be felt in that place, but I perhaps like to think of it as though along the way, because you're creating that humanity and that connection, that it's a real relationship, that for me, it likens towards, some people say you should have a personal relationship which is separate to your business relationships. Like for me, you absolutely can. I consider my clients my friends,
Hmm.
and some are longer friends than others, some are deeper friends than others, but I approach it the same way. I take myself wherever I go. I just want to be the same person wherever. If I put my coaching hat on, that's what I'm doing in that moment, right? If I put my father hat on, that's what I'm doing in the moment. But I want to take myself wherever I go. And I think we're constantly thinking about how do I enjoy time with this person, right? I'm only going to get fulfillment if someone else is fulfilled, right? That's how that works. You give something and you feel fulfilled about it, right? The old saying goes, the more that you give, like you never have to worry about anything in your life. I think that's the Zig Ziglar quote that I just butchered, but that's the concept, right? It's the same thing. Like they will feel the guilt, right? Because that you mean something to them. You're like, oh man, like how can I help him fix this, right? And if you do that together, you will both absolutely get a better result, and perhaps more importantly, have a better experience towards that result.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Nick, this has been a pleasure. I think you and I are very aligned philosophically in the way that we coach and lead others and build relationships. So, with that said, if someone's interested in connecting with you, learning more about how to potentially work with you, where should they go?
They should go just simply to my website, 7figureadvisor.com, 7-figureadvisor.com, and you can find some more stuff out there as well.